The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Chris Kelly and I'm the editor at Total Telecom, and I'll be your host for today's session. Thank you all for joining us. We've got an excellent session ahead, packed full of details and insight from one of the industry's most knowledgeable spokespeople. Today's webinar looks at strategies for monetizing A2P SMS traffic across mobile networks. In particular, we'll be looking at the following areas today: the explosion of A2P messaging, A2P ecosystem and recent trends, A2P messaging fraud, the benefits of managed SMS firewall solutions, and we'll also be looking at how today's hosts, Airtel Business, have helped operators to monetize their A2P messaging services. I'm joined today by a leading expert on the subject of A2P SMS services, so let me introduce them to you. Shikha Gupta is General Manager for Roaming and Mobile Solutions at Airtel. She has 22 years of experience in the industry and has been associated with Airtel since 2003. She's responsible for creating valuable partnerships with MNOs, carrier groups, and messaging partners across a range of geographies. In a moment, I'll hand you over to Shikha to begin her presentation. But before I do, just let me say that if you have any questions throughout the presentation, do send them in to me via the on-screen system. So if you look at your screen, you should see there is a chat function in the bottom right corner. So please do drop any questions you have in there. If I could ask that you include your name and the name of the company that you work for with your question, that would be great. And we'll put those questions to Shikha at the end of the presentation. Okay, so without any further ado, let me hand you over to Shikha Gupta to begin today's webinar. Shikha, it's over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. Greetings and welcome to the webinar. Thanks for taking our time to listen to us on what we have to say on the monetization for SMS traffic. I'm sure the topic is quite interesting because probably we have a wide variety of people who have registered for the webinar, and this is something which everybody can relate to. It is relevant to mobile operators, it is relevant to the enterprise business, and it is also relevant to the messaging partners we all work with all the time. Chris has already given the hygiene checks in terms of any questions would be taken at the end. Just one point I would like to make: if I'm going too fast, and if you want me to go a little slow, maybe you can just send a message to Chris and he can just interrupt and ask me to go a little slow.
Sure
A2P
thing.
messages, yeah. So, I'm sure all of us being a user of a mobile phone know what A2P messages are all about. We get them all through the day, every day. Some of them might be useful, some of them might be useless, some of them might be important, some of them might be irritating. But yeah, we do experience messages all through the day. Now, let me just take you to the first slide of my presentation, which is the explosion of A2P messages. As I mentioned, we see messages every day. It's just growing. It is becoming an inherent part of the communication system of all businesses. It is the most preferred medium of communication, as you would have seen, because it's for enterprises. It is a cost-effective, secure medium. It is trustworthy. It is reliable. It can reach the remotest corner of any country. You would see voice calls are not working, data is not reachable, but SMS practically would deliver in most of the cases. It is still one of the most reliable means of communication because 90% of the messages are read. That's why it is preferred by banking industries, finance companies, insurance, e-commerce, travel, hospitality, retail, you name it, and they all use messaging as a mode of communication. The most common use you would see is your OTPs. So all of us have different apps, different banks, banking transactions. They all send OTPs on the messages, through messages, and we all are using them. Two-factor authentication, transaction alerts, promotional messages. If you're going through some mall, you might even get location-based messages that you're passing through somewhere, and you just get, okay, this event is going on at that particular point. The marketing messages, delivery confirmations, if you're doing an online shopping, you name it and you have it. As you know, it is A2P is growing. the ecosystem of the messaging business consists of, it starts from an enterprise who wants to communicate to the end users, which is a mobile subscriber. Now, in the middle, you will find people like solution providers or messaging aggregators who are actually enabling them to send these messages to the end user. So they provide the solution, they give them the connectivity to reach a mobile operator. There are mobile operators whose customer base you want to reach, and then comes the end user. Now, in the graph, you can see that the expected traffic of A2P messages is only going to grow. We are at about 2.1 trillion messages now. It's expected to go to 2.7 trillion messages in 2022. In terms of value, it is expected to go up to about 26 billion in 2022 from a current value of about 12.5 in 2018. Messages are directly proportional to the population. The larger the population, the more number of messages you would be generating. So by that logic, China, India, Indonesia contribute to the largest markets. In the messaging business, we also look at the domestic messages and there are international messages. So which domestic messages is originating within the country, delivered into the country, and they contribute to about 75 to 80% of the total traffic volume. International is something which is originating out of the country and is generally managed by a multi-country operating enterprise on an OTT who is managing the operations from a central unit where it's headquartered, and it is delivering the messages to across the countries, which is easier for them to manage. A2P messages are growing, though you would see the P2P messages are declining, but the A2P messages are growing. But as they grow, they have their own challenges as well. You would see that there are a lot of spams. If you, for mobile operators, they would come across, cases where there are spam messages being received by the customers. So there are many messages coming. If you have no control on what is coming into your network, anybody can send anything. This leads to a lot of, inconvenience to customers. They might go back and complain to their operators. This might lead to, port outs, because you can be causing a nuisance to the user, while the other operator might have implemented a solution which blocks spam messages. That is one reason. The other reason is it might also be trying to poach the customers from one operator to another. So you would see an incremental port out messages. And all these causes a lot of brand damage to an operator. Second part is that you might also see there is a lot of revenue leakage from messages. Ultimately, the messages are coming to the network through links which you create with different operators or partners who are enabled to deliver to your customers. So if you're not charging the messages, there's a leakage on those messages. You have thirdly the VAS providers. Every mobile network has certain providers, certain solution partners who work with them to enable them to deliver content services. They enable them to deliver VAS services, short codes. And then you also have the OTTs, big OTTs like Google, Facebook, and Twitter, and a couple of them more, which are directly connected to operators, promising them a higher data revenue, and they connect to them, and the agreements are signed up at a strategic level, wherein there is no charge for any messages they terminate, and they can terminate whatever they want. The operators on a largely the operators do not have a very clear system of reporting, and they don't know what is coming into your network. So that also becomes a big problem, as you don't know what is coming into your network and how do you reconcile with what the partners are sending. It also leads to regulatory violations, because if you have spam messages, in some cases the customers, there are countries where you have regulations of not sending a particular type of message. If you're not able to take control of that situation, you might get into situations which are violating the regulation of the local country. So here, moving on from the challenges, I would take you to the next slide, which is are the MNOs the mobile operators getting their dues. Though the messaging is exploding, but as an operator, are they getting the right due? As you would see, looking at the ecosystem, there is a large chance that the operators are falling prey to grey routing. Why? Because the originator of the message is an enterprise, and the enterprise generally don't work with the operators directly because it's not possible for them to connect with so many operators across the world. So what they do is that they work with a third party who gives them a solution and who gives them a route to deliver to the mobile operators. The enterprise pays the partner, but is actually the mobile operator being paid for whatever is being terminated? That's a question mark. So that's the gray route. The aggregators or the solution providers use routes which may not be actually delivering the messages with a paid value to it. It could be going through a route which is free, but they charge the enterprise. So there is arbitrage which is created once you have these kind of situations in our market. Third point is that there could be penalties raised by the regulator, wherein they can charge them heavy penalties for certain type of messages being delivered. So if there's an election and there is a blackout of messages, if suddenly there is a message which is getting delivered, they could be penalized. If there is a country where there is a do not disturb regulation between a period of time, if they're not able to abide by that, operators are liable to pay. There are different situations of DND also applicable where the operators are likely to pay and they are not compensated for that, but the originator of the message is someone else. So there is definitely a high chance that many operators are falling prey to this grey routing and not getting their due. Moving to the next slide. Now, what are the impacts on the operators? First and foremost is if you're not getting paid appropriately or not getting paid at all, there's a loss in termination revenue. With the growing number of messages, there is an increased volume which the network needs to handle. Now, if there's a volume increase on the network, you need to be able to keep up to the capacity utilization. You need to upgrade the network. You need to make sure that your customers are getting the messages properly. For that, you incur an additional cost, but there is no compensating revenue associated with that. There is a network poor utilization on the network capacity side because if there's congestion, your other messages which are important may also get diluted because of the capacity issues on the network side. So it actually leads to a situation where you're losing money, plus you are going to have to invest more. You have customer issues. So it is not a good situation to be. Plus there could be regulatory non-compliance leading to penalties. The mobile squared source says that there is a leakage of about 7.7 billion annually on the grey routes, wherein the mobile operators are actually losing revenue, which is close to about $12 million per operator a year. Now, what are the probable reasons and how do you see the revenue loss? This slide just tries to explain how an operator could lose revenue. Now, the first part on the slide is that you will have free messages on your international and domestic links, which means each operator is connected to other operators, the international roaming partners and the domestic operators for the SMS interconnects and roaming. Now, when these links are not, there are no interworking agreements in place wherein you would charge for a terminating message. This is an area of leakage, and this could be an area of leakage for both P2P and A2P, not A2P alone. So one point is this. Second point is there are certain situations where there are differential priced contracts, which means that you have either some agreements are free of charge, they are not being billed, or there are differential pricing in two kinds of messages. I'll give you an example. In India, if I take the example, there is an international message coming into, there's a different price. Within domestic A2P, there's a different price for a government message and a non-government message. There's a P2P price. So there are 3-4 pricing which is existing in the market. If the moment you have different kinds of pricing, it can lead to an arbitrage, and there could be a route which is being used to deliver the message which is not appropriate, but due to its low price, the partners tend to use it, and the operator has no visibility as to how to stop it because he has no way to check it, no way to measure it. The third part is your non-standardized pricing or payment terms. Even with your VAS vendors or your other partners, be it your A2P aggregators, be it your roaming partners, if you don't have a standard price for termination for a particular kind of message, that can again lead to an arbitrage. So a message could use a different route than what it is designed for. The payment terms is another angle to it. If you have a payment terms of say 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, that could be used as another arbitrage for creating a different rate in the market to send messages to a particular operator. So this is the third leakage point. The fourth leakage point is your A2P SMS traffic, which is coming from the free connections which you have given to an OTT or to a bank or to another partner of choice, which probably might sound strategic at one point of time, but going down the line, it might not be strategic because end of the day, it is a mutually beneficial partnership. It cannot be one way benefit to the OTT and not to the operator whose pipe is being and the base is being used to monetize on the OTT revenues. The fifth leakage point is your SIM farms. SIM farms are basically mobile SIMs which are being used to generate messages from your own network to your customers. So instead of coming from outside, it is coming from within your network. So this broadly just gives you a view of what are the various kind of revenue loss options the operators see and what all needs to be looked at when you're looking at a monetization of the messaging business. I would move to the next slide. Now, what do the operators need to do if they want to monetize their messages? First of all, they need to know how to manage, how to analyze, so that they can monetize the traffic. The network needs to understand what is the difference between the P2P and the A2P SMS ecosystems if you need to charge them differently. If you don't want to charge them differently, one price for any message is good enough. But for differential pricing, you need to clearly understand what is the difference between a different kind of message. There's a difference in say P2P and A2P pricing. Say one is costing you $1, the other one is costing you a cent, and the other one is costing you half a cent. That definitely will be arbitrage in the system. Third is that you need to, as an operator, you need to have capabilities to quantify and reconcile the messages count and billing. Because if you don't have that count, you can be taken for a ride. If you're relying on a partner to provide you the data, you really cannot be sure that you are being given your right due. So it is important for an operator to be able to have this capability on their side. It again needs investment. It needs work to be done on getting data from different systems in the mobile network ecosystem and involving your revenue assurance team and your billing team. And but this is important. An operator needs to also look at their contracts. All contracts should be similar priced. If there are contracts which are differently priced in terms of the rate, the currency, the units, so that all needs to be standardized to be able to monetize properly. Any arbitrage there again leads to leakage. So there are multiple sources from which the SMSs reach an operator's network. So the customer receives a network, he is transparent of where it is coming because it's ultimately coming from the operator. But it could be your domestic operator who's your competition network. It could be your own A2P SMS providers. It could be your VAS providers. It could be your international roaming partners. It can come from anywhere. So all these sources, and SIM cards, of course. So we need to make sure that all these sources are actually managed, and you able to monetize anything which is coming from anywhere. Whatever is allowed should be allowed. What is not allowed should not be allowed. The most important part is that you need to have the right partnerships. Your A2P providers, they should be your partners who are able to enhance your business and not cheat you. So that's a very important part to the whole discussion, because this is important. So in addition to what they need, what are the common pitfalls which we see in an operator's day-to-day operations? Ecosystem is showing us that the A2P messages are increasing, but then again, it's very important. It's difficult to justify the high capex and opex cost to implement a solution to increase the capacities when you don't see a return revenue coming in. That's a challenge which a mobile operator would continuously face if we are not able to monetize. Then there are partners who are working with mobile operators. They have the capabilities of implementing some solution which might block. So they might give you a solution, but how sure would an operator be whether the blocking is effective? Maybe the blocking is happening on selected net type of traffic which is not originated by the partner but from third parties. So still you are in a situation of a leakage. There is no way an operator can implement, and if there is a solution implemented, say some intervention or some blocking is implemented, reports are complicated. We don't know how to read them. VAS partners or aggregators or international partners, they also tend to misuse the GTs which are allocated to them for terminating messages, or their own GTs which are for roaming traffic exchange. They can send messages which are not allowed on those routes, but if you're not watching, if you're not aware, then obviously you're losing. Reporting, as I mentioned earlier, is a problem. Till you're able to report them properly, you will not be able to monetize correctly. I would like to just give you an example here in case of the GTs being misused. So we had a situation wherein the promotional messages were not allowed after the do not disturb regulation was implemented. Now, suddenly you blocked all those messages on the domestic side, but we saw all the messages started suddenly moving from the international roaming partners side, and the customers were getting messages from all countries, and the content was promotion. Buy a flat here, or go to Domino's and get this thing. So all the promotions suddenly moved, and it obviously led to a situation where it was undesired messages not to be sent, regulatory non-compliance, and whole lot of things. So here we see partners misusing the GTs of international operators to terminate the messages into a network. So what is the solution? The solution is a managed SMS firewall. Now, managed SMS firewall now is a solution wherein a network firewall is deployed in the network. Any message passing through the network destined to be delivered to a customer from any source passes through the firewall. And the system has an intelligence and rules to determine what is allowed, what should be allowed, and what should not be allowed. So anything is filtered and sent to customers. You have clear visibility of what is going on. And why I'm saying managed is because we've seen that there are solutions deployed in markets where they have a solution in place, but there are still leakages. Why? Because nobody is reviewing what is happening, because it's not managed properly. It's just deployed and left without anyone to manage it on a day-to-day basis. Moving to the next slide. How does a managed firewall help an operator? It empowers the mobile operators to reduce the SMS threats, the fraudulent messages or the spam messages, because you know what is coming in. You can block based on different policies. You can monitor the incoming and the outgoing messages. You can deliver a robust blocking policy based on sender IDs, based on mobile numbers, based on the content of the message. And it enables you to take actions as it provides you insights. Through analysis on the tool, it has artificial intelligence, it keeps updating the policies. You can blacklist if you see there is a rule which is impacting the experience of your customer, or it is impacting some other thing. You can blacklist, you can whitelist, you can do a lot of things. So it is very customer friendly, and it takes care of the operator requirements as well as the monetization. Now, with all this, the operator is able to block the gray routes, the leakage is minimized, and the A2P messages is increasing. The revenues are increasing. Plus, it gives a better visibility and control over what is coming into the network. So they know clearly what exactly is coming, how to monetize. Now, let me take you to where does Airtel solution come into picture. It's a very simple solution, the firewall solution with the managed services. Now, the diagram shows you that there are A2P SMS clients. They send the messages to us directly or through some other partners who are connected to us. The operator side, we implement a SMS firewall, and then comes the mobile operator. So the solution works in a way that it detects what is going through the network first. So the firewall will detect, okay, these many messages are going through. It will analyze what kind of messages they are. Are they messages which we allowed? It is a transaction, it is promotion, it is different kind of policies, different kind of things can be implemented in terms of analyzing the messages. Then based on the policies which is agreed with the operator, whether they want to block a certain kind of message, say they want to charge differentially for a different kind of message, it can be done based on the content which is going through the firewall. And the Airtel message, we have our own gateway. So along with the gateway, we are able to deliver a package solution of bringing the traffic as well as implementing the firewall and taking care of all the blocking rules, which helps the operator increase the revenues. I will just take you through the next slide, which tells us how the Airtel managed firewall works. First of all, when we have to do a sizing on the hardware and the software along with the operator as to what is the capacity required on the system, it will take care of a future projections, whatever the operator projects in terms of messages they are expecting to receive into the network or originate from the network. The team will agree on some call flows for how the traffic will be managed for the incoming and the outgoing messages. They will design the testing scenarios. All the KPIs, which are network KPIs, which need to be kept well within the limits, needs to be managed properly. So the testing will happen. The migration activities will be taken care of by the two network teams. The core team on the operator side, their messaging teams, as well as our team will work together and make sure that the KPIs are under control and the traffic is migrated. After the traffic migration, the traffic is analyzed for a couple of days, and then they come up with the filtration rules depending on the requirements of the operator, what he wants to implement in terms of blocking and what they want to allow. So we work with the operator in creating those policies and filtration rules. Then the reports are shared with the mobile operator. They have their consent, they understand, they see what kind of volumes they are expecting, and then we implement the blocking of the gray routes. Our policies are updated on a daily basis. The team analyzes and throws up the different gray routes which they see if it needs to be taken up with the operator in terms of a partner who is misusing the network, or if it needs to be taken up with the end enterprise through our partners or directly. That is something which we do as a part of the managed service solution. Now, why Airtel? So the largest advantage of working with Airtel is that we leverage our experience of being a global operator and a carrier. We feel the pain an operator feels. We know what you go through day in and day out, because that's what we do every day. We know we manage our own network, so we are able to empathize, and we know exactly what you're looking for and how do we give it to you as a part of our services. So that's the biggest advantage you will see if Airtel is your partner. Second thing is that we have our own ecosystem. So we have our own messaging suite, wherein we have our own messaging hub, and we deal with P2P and A2P messages for our own operations, just the rest of the world. So we clearly can offer you the combination of a firewall solution along with the aggregation of the messages for your network. So it comes as a bouquet of the solution, and you don't need to look at multiple partners for that. You can still connect to multiple, but yeah, depending on what the kind of ecosystem you want, that's an advantage we bring in. We have had multiple deployments in the last 2 years, and we've not come across a single instance of leakage, and it is very, very tightly controlled. We are very transparent in providing the backend, the reports. So the basic challenge you see is that there is no transparency on the reporting side, and we have our own revenue assurance team. We are an operator. We know what other challenges an operator faces, and we are very transparent in providing what is the data available in terms of how many messages, which kind of messages are going into the network. It's a very transparent reporting system. You get daily reports. You know what is going on. The firewall automatically keeps updating the policies day in and day out. Plus, any deviation seen in terms of somebody trying to, manipulate the content so that they can pass the firewall is actually brought up to our notice, and we take it up regularly with our partners and with the mobile operator if it's directly connected customers out there. So this is helping the operators to increase the A2P revenues from X to multiples of X, depending on market to market. The same solution can actually be applied to, largely we see the solution is being implemented for A2P, international A2P, but the same solution is actually available for domestic A2P as well. You can, if you implement on the domestic A2P also, you can do a differential charging based on brands, based on banking messages versus the normal promotional messages. You can do it. So it enables you with various things. Depending on the operator's requirements, we have the flexibility to change and modify the output of the system. So I think we are already halfway through from the time allocated. So this brings me to the end of the slides which I have. If there is any questions, it's open for.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much, Shikha. That was a fantastic presentation. We've had lots of questions coming in, so okay. We'll just rattle off a couple to start with. Sure. So this first one is from me, actually. How much time does it take to implement a robust firewall solution for any operator, and what needs to be done post-implementation to improve the efficiency and monetization?
Okay, that's a very, very good question. See, the average time it would take to implement a firewall would be, I would say, 6 to 8 to 10 weeks, depending on the country. It actually depends on the country, because we normally take 2-3 weeks to finalize the solution, the call flows, and then the sizing of the equipment. Post that, it depends how much time it will take for us to ship the equipment to the country. Different countries have different rules, so it could be as fast as 3-4 weeks. It could take sometimes 2 months as well. So keeping that in mind, we need another month to implement if everything goes fine. In some cases, we've seen that, the call flows testing also itself takes a lot of time. And if there are, problems, because there are a lot of teams which need to work together, because the firewall is only an entity which is sitting into a network. There are different streams of traffic which need to be moved to the firewall. So every team, whether it's an A2P SMS, whether it's the P2P traffic, whether it's the international or the domestic off-net traffic, they need to be moved to the firewall. So sometimes the KPIs are impacted, sometimes they are not able to get the desired result, sometimes there is an STP required in the network. So depending on the network architecture, how they are designed, I would say it could take probably 3 months, 2-3 months.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question, is there any difference in strategy for firewall implementation in A2P or P2P messages and corresponding revenue leakage?
So, so this, again, P2P and A2P are quite different. So in terms of strategy, yes, P2P is simple. It's a message which is a text message between two customers, right? So in monetizing P2P, you need to make sure that you're blocking the messages on the direct roaming links. It normally comes on a roaming links between two operators. You're blocking that route, and you're only allowing it through a message hub. So what we do with a couple of operators and within Airtel as well, we block the direct roaming links. We don't allow P2P messages between two operators to terminate. We ask them to come through a hub. So once it is blocked, then only they will come through a hub. But if you don't block, then absolutely it's a leakage, because you will not get paid for that message, right? So A2P, on the other hand, is a little different, because the A2P messages are not from operators directly. It is actually from enterprises. The routes could be multiple. Multiple routes are used for A2P messages. You can classify based on national, international, but so the strategy is a little different from A2P and P2P, and the volumes are drastically different. P2P is very small compared to the A2P volumes, and the pricing generally is also different in a couple of countries.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Shika. Got a couple more questions here. One comes from Jerry from Bridge Alliance. She says, my question is, how do you see operators differentiating themselves in their A2P messaging offering when compared to OTT messaging through social media, which are developing really fast in terms of their offerings and user stickiness? What gives operators the right to win in this space compared to OTT providers?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but I will just articulate what I capture from the question. I think what she's trying to ask is that A2P messages and OTT messages are totally different, right? Yep. So I don't think we can compare. We're talking about A2P messages, and OTT sending a message when you register for an app, you get a verification code. That's an A2P message. But when you already registered on an app, say if I look at a WhatsApp or a Facebook Messenger, I'm already registered. I'm chatting with someone else, and this is a message between two people, that is replacing a P2P message and not A2P message. So A2P is basically application to machine. It will be verification, authentication, and promotion, right? OTTs will not do, they might do a promotion. So they might do now to save their cost. They might do, and if you are a customer of an OTT provider, maybe they will get a in-app notification, so that they don't have to pay for that message, and you're already actively using their app. They will communicate to you through the in-app notification, which otherwise would have come as an A2P message. So that's different. But there is no comparison between an A2P message from an operator and from a strategy perspective versus a OTT messaging per se. I hope I got the question right.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the next question. So, what are the services which can be monitored with SMS firewall? And also, does the firewall help in monitoring USSD, SRI, or other signaling errors?
So signaling firewall is different than the messaging firewall. That's different product altogether. USSD also is a part of the solution which we are offering right now. So there are signaling firewalls available, but those are different than the messaging firewalls.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just having a look through the questions here. I think you touched on this briefly after the question came in, Shika, but if you can just reiterate, that would be great. What are the options for business models for operators? That comes from Katernia Nakanek.
So you need to know the business models for the monetization?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are a couple of business models which can be worked out depending on what the operator is looking at. One is a pure capex model, right? You go and implement you buy, and the operator buys the firewall and they implement, and then there is a managed services charge to it. There could be an OPEX model, totally a monthly charge, or it could be a revenue share.
Okay. So I think we've probably got time for two more questions, Shika, if that's okay with you, at least.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So we've got another question from Waleed Eldasoki here. And Waleed asks, how can we ingest the speedy changing content for filtering on the firewall, considering the natural variance between local and international traffic?
That's the job of the firewall. If the policies are being reviewed, and they will be able to catch the manipulations done in the content, the changing content, and be able to block it. It might take a couple of hours. So the initial few messages might pass by the time the firewall analyzes and sees there's something new which is coming to the network. But eventually, yes, they would come up with a policy to block. I'll give you an example here. Recently, in one of our markets, we saw that the messages of one of the content was so much manipulated that after every letter of their brand, there were three special characters. So the message actually, if it was say 30 letters, actually became almost 120 letters with 80 letters which were special characters, so that the firewall is not able to catch the message and not able to block it. So we had to manually figure this out and create a policy, and we blocked them, because when you look at the traffic which is flowing through your network every day, a certain volume is expected, right? Yeah. So the moment the volume dip is seen for a particular kind of message, there's an alarm. Why? What happened? And then the team goes back and analyzes as to what exactly went. Why this particular thing was not captured. But that was so many characters which were special characters just to confuse the policies. But we figured it out. So those are the things which actually are important for an operator to have, because I've seen many cases where there are firewalls implemented. When we talk to operators, our partners, firewalls are implemented, but there are gray routes available, which means that firewalls are not doing their work in terms of changing and adapting to the policies, and nobody is reviewing what is going on there.
Okay, thank you very much, Shika. Thinking back to your presentation, I think one of the statistics that you mentioned was that there was going to be 2.7 trillion SMS messages by 2022. It's a staggering amount when you think about it. What do operators need to do to ensure that they're ready for that sort of volume of traffic?
Yeah, so on the operator side, I think the networks in any case are evolving. So the networks to accept that traffic into a network, there needs to be a network upgrade. This is one of the points which I mentioned, that the traffic is exploding, right? So based on the traffic, you need to increase the capacity on your network to be able to accept that traffic, because if they're not able to accept the traffic, there is congestion, the messages will fail. It leads to customer inconvenience. Imagine you are expecting an OTP to come to your phone when you are doing a transaction with your credit card, right? And the OTP doesn't come to you because the network is congested, because volumes are increasing, the network needs to be scaled up, there's an investment on the network side, but the CFO says, I'm not going to spend any money because there is no revenue. Why should I spend more, right? So it's it's something which is going to ultimately impact the customer experience. And on the OTT side, he would send one message, customer doesn't enter that message, he will send another message. So it increases the volume further. So you need to invest in the network to be able to accept those messages. So that's what operators will have to do. But I'm sure depending on the country of operation, depending on the population, as I said, I mean, if I look at India, which is one of the second largest markets for A2P, it's exploding. It's just exploding. So we need to upgrade our capacities. We do it, and 6 months down the line, we've already crossed what we projected for. And then it all goes back to, we need more money.
All right. Thank you very much, Shikha. We've got a question here from Martin from Top Tier Connect.
Yes.
He says, have you implemented the firewall to all Airtel operators in the group? I'm wondering how many A2P SMS per subscribers you see in different regions on a monthly basis after the firewall implementation.
Yeah, so we have actually implemented on most of them, I think. And the number of messages in a particular market is not a standard figure. It depends on various factors. It depends on what kind of brand, what kind of smartphone penetration, what kind of data consumption. So it varies from market to market in terms of international A2P and domestic A2P, both. So there's no standard number I can give you across markets.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so one final question. This is from me, and I think it relates to something you were talking about in your presentation. So you spoke about the requirements of sort of being aware of regulatory challenges. So what regulatory challenges should operators be mindful of? And in general, do you think regulatory authorities are getting the balance right, or do they need to be stricter or more relaxed in their frameworks?
So see, when I mention about regulatory policies, it all depends on country of operation. So I mean, in India, the regulation is pretty strict. It is not that strict in other countries, right? So it first of all depends on which country we are talking about. What is the local regulation there? What is it saying? So local regulation could be that we have do not disturb in most of the countries coming up now. So I see in our market in Nigeria, we have do not disturb, we have in India, which means if a customer has opted for a do not disturb category, you can't send them messages. The moment we default and the customer gets a message and he complains, we are penalized, right? So there is no standard answer for what the regulators are supposed to, they need to be more strict, or it all depends on country to.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that, Shikha. I think that's probably all the questions that we've got time for today. Did you? We have got a few minutes, just if you wanted to make a few sort of closing remarks, just to sum up what we've talked about today. So I'll hand over to you just for a minute or so.
Sorry, I got disconnected.
No problem, Shikha. I was just saying that I think that's probably all the time that we have for questions today. Did you want to make any closing remarks before we go?
So I just want to say that the messaging is a revenue stream the operators need to look at. I still read there are a lot of operators who have not been able to monetize, and there are grey routes available, which probably going down the line another 4-5 years we would see many more would have implemented, but there's a good opportunity existing in the system, and we would recommend that operators look at the firewall to monetize the messages.
All right, thank you very much, Shikha. That concludes today's webinar. I'd like to thank Shikha for a fascinating discussion and to thank you all for joining us today. We hope to see you all again next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.